Settle in, relax your breathing, and allow your mind to drift as we journey to a quiet, remote corner of northern Utah. A place whispered about for generations. A place surrounded by stories of lights in the sky, strange creatures, and unexplained events. A place many call one of the most active paranormal hotspots on Earth. Tonight, we gently explore the haunting legacy of Skinwalker Ranch. Far out in the Uinta Basin, the land holds a long history of unusual tales. Stories that stretch back to the earliest people who ever lived there. 3 out of every 4 residents say they've encountered something out of the ordinary. Glowing orbs, silent craft, towering figures in the shadows. Even rumors of Bigfoot-like beings wandering through the sagebrush. Even travelers passing through feel it. A quiet heaviness in the air, as if the dusty roads and endless open space hold secrets, waiting patiently beneath the silence. Some believe all this activity centers around one specific place. A beautiful 480-acre ranch about 100 miles east of Salt Lake City. Over the decades, it carried many names, but locals came to know it simply as Skinwalker Ranch, named for a Navajo curse, a path forbidden for tribal members who believe the land lies in the territory of the Skinwalker. For much of the late 20th century, the ranch was owned by a private family whose identity remained hidden. Then, in 1987, they suddenly abandoned the property without explanation, leaving it empty for more than 7 years. Until 1994, when Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased it, believing they'd found their dream home. The ranch was everything they imagined: sprawling pastures, thick woodlands, and a ridge rising in the north like a protective guardian. Terry, a dedicated cattle breeder, saw endless opportunity. The price had been unusually low, but he saw it as fate, the beginning of a new chapter. Still, there were strange details. The house, empty for years, had deadbolts on nearly every door and window. Heavy chains were fixed to the walls, strong enough to hold massive guard dogs in place. The previous owners had insisted on usual contract clauses, including a rule that no one could dig on the land without their written permission. Odd, but the Shermans brushed it aside. But in the back of Terry's mind, a quiet question lingered. What had frightened the former owners so deeply? The answer began to reveal itself on their very first day. While unloading the moving truck, the family noticed a shape approaching from across the pasture. As it came closer, they realized it was a wolf, but unlike any they had ever seen. This one was enormous, 3 times the size of an ordinary wolf. And yet, it behaved gently, calmly, almost like a tame dog. It wagged its tail. It allowed Terry's father to pet it. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then, in an instant, the wolf lunged toward the corral and clamped its massive jaws around the head of a calf. Terry grabbed a weapon, striking the wolf again and again, but it did not react. Even when he fired his .357 Magnum, nothing. Not a flinch, not a drop of blood. Shot after shot, the creature only stepped back, watching him with calm, icy blue eyes. Finally, after a powerful rifle shot, a small chunk of flesh fell away. Yet even that piece looked old and rotten, The wolf trotted off calmly, disappearing into the trees. When Terry followed the tracks through wet mud, they simply ended. No wolf, no trail, no explanation. And that was only day one. Over the next weeks, Gwen began noticing strange disturbances. Groceries she unpacked would repack themselves. Items she placed in one room would vanish and appear somewhere else hours later. She questioned her memory until Terry's tools began disappearing too. A 70-pound post digger vanished from a field, then reappeared weeks later, hanging 70 feet up in a tree. At night, strange lights appeared along the fence line. At first, Terry thought they were trespassers, but when he approached, the lights rose silently into the air and drifted over the trees. As winter came, the events escalated. Cattle began disappearing, vanishing entirely from deep snow, leaving no tracks beyond a certain point. Even large, healthy animals simply stopped existing. Others returned dead or mutilated, their bodies carved with surgical precision. No blood, no tracks, no struggle. Throughout 1995, the ranch became a place of nightly strangeness. Black, featureless figures peeked through windows. Invisible forces moved through cattle herds. Voices whispered from the sky in languages no one recognized. The ground rumbled with the sound of machines no one could see. One evening, Terry witnessed a large, silent craft floating low over the snow, shaped like a small, dark aircraft, but utterly quiet. When Terry shifted his weight and a single joint cracked, the lights on the craft instantly shut off as though it had heard him. Then it drifted away, vanishing into the night. As spring returned, more cattle were found dead in impossible conditions. Huge holes appeared in the earth, hundreds of pounds of soil removed without a trace. But the most disturbing events involved the orbs. Red orbs danced through the trees, zipping around the ranch. Blue orbs, much rarer, radiated a fear so intense that humans felt it instantly. Terry feared these more than anything else. One night, a blue orb drifted from the tree line toward the house. Terry's dogs charged after it, growling fiercely. The orb retreated into the darkness. Moments later, the dogs yelped in terror. When Terry searched the next morning, all that remained were 3 scorched piles of ash. It was the breaking point. The Shermans were exhausted, terrified, and nearly bankrupt. They had lost cattle, pets, sleep, and peace of mind. Strange entities now entered their home. The family slept together in one room. Gwen lost her job. Their children were struggling in school. They couldn't stay any longer. In desperation, Terry contacted the press, hoping someone would listen. Most ignored him, but one article reached billionaire Robert Bigelow, who had recently formed a scientific research group dedicated to studying unexplained phenomena. Bigelow bought the ranch in 1996. The Shermans left, and a new chapter began. Bigelow's team, the National Institute for Discovery Science, soon moved in, equipped, trained, and determined. For nearly a decade, they observed the ranch and experienced their own encounters. Lights, creatures, portals, and silent craft emerging from glowing openings in the sky. The land remained quiet during the day, but in the depths of night, its mysteries revealed themselves once again. The hunter had become the hunted, and the legend of Skinwalker Ranch continued. Even after the Sherman family left the ranch, the land remained quiet, only on the surface. Beneath its stillness, something seemed to watch, to wait, as if the property itself was aware of every presence that stepped across its borders. When the new research team arrived, scientists, technicians, and investigators, they came with open minds but disciplined methods. They believed that careful observation, steady patience, and scientific precision could finally uncover the truth behind the ranch's many mysteries. Yet almost immediately, they sensed what the Shermans had felt: a subtle weight in the air, an invisible pressure, as though the land had been expecting them. During the first few nights, the team set up equipment around the property: high-resolution cameras, thermal scanners, magnetic sensors, motion detectors, and radiation meters. They placed them along the ridge, near the creek, inside the homestead, and at the edges of the pastures. Even with all their preparation, they felt strangely exposed, like they were guests in someone else's domain. Most nights were quiet, too quiet. The stillness had a way of making time stretch. Hours felt longer than they should. Nights felt deeper. Even the usual sounds of wildlife, the distant call of owls, the rustle of small creatures in the brush, seemed muted, as if the land held its breath. One evening, just after midnight, two researchers sat on the porch, listening to the low hum of the wind moving gently through the trees. The sky was clear, scattered with stars. For a moment, the ranch felt peaceful. But then, without warning, every motion sensor around the property began to trigger. Soft, distant clicks from receivers inside the house. Something was moving out there, but not in a straight line. It zigzagged across the land, from one sensor to another, faster than any person could run. The two researchers exchanged a look. Calm but alert, they stepped off the porch and scanned the pastures. Their flashlights swept through tall grass and toward the dark ridge, but nothing was there. Yet, the sensors kept tripping. Far off to the west, near the tree line, an unusual ripple moved through the tall weeds, like the shape of a large creature passing through, but invisible, leaving only the disturbance of its presence. The researchers held their breath as the ripple crossed the field directly toward one of the cameras. The device flickered, then shut down entirely. Not long after, another camera failed, then another. Within minutes, nearly half the monitoring equipment had gone offline. Inside the command room, the scientists gathered around the remaining screens. Static, blackouts, occasional bursts of color, as though a magnetic surge had swept across the ranch, draining devices one by one. One of the team members, a calm and seasoned physicist, whispered that it felt almost like a testing, as if something unseen was examining their equipment, pushing the limits, probing the defenses they had built. Then, the ranch fell silent again. The team stepped outside to inspect the damage. The air felt heavy and warm, unusual for the late hour. As they reached the far pasture, one of the researchers paused, sensing movement behind him. Slowly, he turned. There, along the ridge, Soft lights shimmered between the trees, gentle, pulsing glows. They moved slowly, weaving through the brush like floating lanterns. Not harsh, not threatening, just watching. The lights drifted back and forth, almost curious, as if they were studying the newcomers with the same interest the newcomers had in them. The team stood quietly, not daring to move too quickly. The lights continued their silent dance, then gradually faded into the darkness. Over the following weeks, events unfolded in ways the researchers could never fully predict. Sometimes, days passed with no activity at all. Other times, phenomena happened so suddenly and so strangely that no instrument seemed able to capture reliable data. One afternoon, as the sun hung low over the ridge, a geologist walked along the creek to take soil samples. The quiet sound of running water was soothing, and for a moment he felt at ease, enjoying the crisp air and the gentle sway of cottonwood branches overhead. He knelt by the bank and scooped a sample into a small container. But then, just a few steps away, the creek began to ripple, subtle at first, then more forcefully, as if something large and unseen had stepped into the water. He froze, listening. The water churned for several seconds, splashing softly, though nothing visible disturbed the surface. Then the movement stopped. The creek returned to its calm flow. The geologist stepped back slowly, his heart steady but alert. He gathered his equipment, knowing that whatever had caused that disturbance wasn't an ordinary animal. Later that night, the team reviewed recordings from sensors placed near the creek. A low, rhythmic vibration had been captured. Something deep, almost mechanical, pulsing beneath the ground. Not loud enough for the human ear, but clear within the data. As they studied the signal, one researcher whispered that it resembled machinery buried far beneath the earth, or something moving deep below the ranch, far beyond human reach. The days stretched on, each night whispering new mysteries. Strange footprints appeared in fresh mud, resembling no known animal. Shadows moved where no person stood. Equipment malfunctioned for reasons no engineer could explain. But the most intriguing pattern was this. Whatever the phenomenon was, it never behaved the same way twice. It adapted, it reacted, it changed shape, sound, and presence as though aware of the observers. Some nights it appeared as lights in the sky, other times as invisible forces rippling through grass or faint voices drifting from the air. It was as if the ranch possessed a mind of its own, calm, patient, and impossibly intelligent. One evening, after weeks of steady observation, a small group of researchers sat around a quiet campsite on the property's edge. They rarely slept well during their time on the ranch, so instead, they often shared stories under the night sky, seeking comfort in the human warmth of conversation. The fire crackled softly. A gentle breeze whispered through the sagebrush. One researcher spoke first, saying that she felt no malice from the land, only a sense of immense depth, as though the ranch stretched not just across acres, but across dimensions. Another agreed, saying that whatever existed here seemed less like a threat and more like a vast, ancient intelligence. Something that revealed only what it wished to reveal. Far above them, the stars glimmered quietly, reflected in the scientists' eyes as they contemplated possibilities far beyond their training or expectations. Hours passed peacefully, until finally the fire died down and the group rose to return to their quarters. But as they walked, one of them paused. Out on the distant ridge, a single orange glow hovered, silent, steady, and warm. It was the same type of portal-like light Terry Sherman had once seen. The researchers stood still, watching as the glow slowly widened. For a brief moment, it revealed a glimpse of something impossible. A bright blue sky through the center of the opening, even though Utah's night was dark and moonlit. Shapes moved within the opening, slow, deliberate, distant. Perhaps craft, perhaps something else entirely. The glow gently pulsed, then slowly faded from sight, closing as softly as a curtain drawn before sleep. The ranch returned to stillness, and once again, the land felt calm, patient, and aware, as though it had shown them only a small piece of something much larger, something ancient, something waiting, something alive in the silence of Skinwalker Ranch.